It's completely normal and even healthy to have concerns about money. Let's face it. With the constant news about the stock market fluctuations, seeing it even dropping, economic downturns, everyone, even the president, talking about a recession, it can make us a little nervous. There are a lot of spending cuts and they're impacting a lot of people. Pretty much everyone knows somebody that's being impacted. So financial worries can easily become overwhelming when you let it all get to you. What we're going to dive into today is really 3 steps to help you stop worrying about money and, more importantly, doing something about it. Because what I do find is that when people take action and they do something about it, there's less worry versus just sitting there, dwelling on it, focusing on, oh my gosh, we're going to go into a recession. Some economists even think we're going into a depression, which seems real extreme. The reality of it is that when we have a plan, and specifically a plan B, and we are prepared, it sets us up for having a plan so that we can worry less. And that, my friends, is the goal, not only now, but more importantly, when you're in retirement. Hi, I'm Annette Bau, host of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast and founder of the Millionaire Insider. My mission is to help you simplify the money game so you can create a financially secure and fulfilled life without having to have a PhD or spend countless hours on your finances. You're going to learn how to think like a millionaire, stop worrying about money and wondering if your financial house is truly in order, and instead spend your time doing what you love. With over 3 decades advising 7, 8, and even 9-figure millionaires, and now joining that elite group, I'm in a unique position to help you make the best financial choices so you can create a secure financial future and retirement you love. This is the Wealth Inside and Out podcast. Today's free resource is our residual income guide. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/RIG. One of the best and most important strategies to help you stop worrying about money is creating passive and residual income streams. Let's face it, when you have consistent income, you worry less. In fact, I have clients who literally were supposed to have died like literally years before. One specific one, when I started working with her, was supposed to, her mortality based on her doctor and her health, she was supposed to have died 15 years earlier. I started working with her. She ended up living another 17 years. And the one thing I will say that she had was passive and residual income. And I have seen it over and over again. People who have streams of revenue worry less. And this resource is really just insight on how to create residual income streams as well as what you can do to get started. So again, themillionaireinsider.com/RIG. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/103. All materials and intellectual property are copywritten by themillionaireseries.com. This information is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to replace any advisor or specialist or to provide any investment, financial, tax, retirement planning, or healthcare advice. So let's dive in. The first thing I want to address are the 3 types of financial worry, the ones that I see most often. And what you'll find is people generally fall into one of these categories when it comes to money concerns. So the first one is just an occasional worrier. These are individuals that sometimes feel stressed about money, but they manage to stay balanced most of the time. So maybe they have a big credit card bill coming in and they feel a little concerned about it, or they didn't get the bonus they thought they were going to get or make the sales they thought for that month, and they feel a little concerned. But it's occasional and it's not really a big deal. It doesn't really impact their life. So that's the first group. The second one is what I refer to as the oblivious group. And typically, the only reason these people are in my life is because they're married to somebody who's not, meaning somebody who wants a plan, who has a plan, who's creating a plan and implementing it. And the partner is kind of oblivious. They want to just ignore it. They're not really concerned about it. They're often unaware of potential issues until a serious matter occurs, a crisis hits. They might even ignore financial planning until they're forced to rethink their situation, sometimes waking up to a harsh reality like a broke retirement. This can be a problem. And sometimes what happens is you'll have a couple where one is a good planner, the other one's not. Everything's fine while the planner's alive, but the minute the planner dies and the other one's left, it can be a disaster because all of a sudden that person becomes like a little kid in a candy store. Their primal brain takes over and they're just enjoying life. Life's short. We got to enjoy it now. And I am all about enjoying life now. I'm also about having a plan and making sure you're going to be okay, not just now, but in the future. Oftentimes they enjoy life now, but they just are not prepared for the future. And then number 3 is what I refer to as the obsessed. These are the individuals who constantly worry about every financial detail. While their concern can be paralyzing, a strategic plan can help turn that anxiety into more of a proactive plan with less anxiety, less sleepless nights, and an ability to more enjoy your life and to spend your time doing what you want versus worrying about what might happen. One of the biggest problems with 2 and 3 comes up in retirement. So number 2, what you'll find with people in number 2, especially if their partner who was a planner has died or they've gotten divorced, is they often struggle because they haven't saved enough money and their life becomes miserable. Mary, who attended one of my workshops, had a friend and she said her life is turned into a pure HE double toothpick. She said it's a nightmare. She worries all the time because she did not take the time to create a plan. So don't let that be you, because that one's an easy one that you can avoid. Number 3, one of the biggest challenges I see is that when this person had kids and they were working, they only had so much time to worry because they were preoccupied with other things. When they enter retirement, a lot of times it can be really hard because they've got too much time on their hands, and how they fill it is by worrying. Today, we're going to dive into 3 steps to help you reduce the time that you spend worrying about your money, and so that you can enjoy your life more and you can be doing what you enjoy doing and enjoying the time you have here. Just as physical fitness requires that you work those muscles. If you want to have muscles, you got to go and you got to lift. Today, I feel like I'm like in a third dimension. We not only went to one class, we went to 2. So we went to barbell, and then we went to another one that was like a barbell, but it's not as heavy a weight, but it's like working really deep muscles. And we literally took a 2-hour nap afterwards. But the point being is, I just got back into town on Friday and I missed working out. The hotel we're staying at had a club, but it wasn't super nice. And it didn't have what I like to work out with. So I didn't work out on Wednesday, which I normally do. So we did 2 today and I can feel it like, oh my goodness. But the reality of it is we all know that if we want muscle, we've got to work out. The same thing is true when it comes to our mental approach to money. By doing the work to exercise that muscle of having a plan and then implementing it, it can pay huge dividends. Now, if you don't have a checklist or you have not had somebody review your retirement plan, I encourage you to download our retirement plan checklist. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/RPC. This checklist is just going to be a gauge of saying, do you have everything in order? Is there something you're missing? We have taken years to create this just based on real world in the trenches, what people are doing, what people miss, so that it's all encompassing. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/RPC. So the first step is your money and mindset, as well as self-awareness. And it all begins with your worth barometer, which is your belief in self-esteem. One of the most common reasons people worry about money is their belief on how they see the world and what they believe to be true, even if it's not factual. When we don't value ourselves, we lack the confidence required to manage our money successfully. We don't do the things we need to do. The biggest issue with a low worth barometer is that we either justify what we're doing or we are so driven by our primal brain, that brain that wants to have that dark chocolate, that brain that wants to have a glass of wine, that brain that wants to have that new purse. It doesn't matter what you're filling that with. Hopefully it's something good, like working out or going on a hike or doing things such as that, which are a lot better. But the reality of it is people who have a low worth barometer are focused in on that instant gratification, and it just wreaks havoc when it comes to their money. Another common element to people who worry about money, and a critical step in stopping your worrying about money, is to identify and remove money blocks. Most people have barriers with money, and some of those blocks wreak havoc on our long-term financial security and our peace of mind. One of the best ways to discover a money block is to identify triggers. The first step in this process is to pay attention and recognize what triggers your financial worries, and then view those moments as opportunities to reassess your broader picture. For example, you are listening to political news, baloney. And I don't care where you're getting fed your news. The bottom line is, if you're watching one of the main media outlets, they're pretty much feeding you what you want to hear. And some people are listening to ones that everything's great, right? And they don't have the reality that maybe not. Other ones, everything's a problem, and they have no reality that there are some things that are problems, some things that aren't. So we got to first of all identify when we get triggered. If you're listening to some news outlet and all of a sudden you hear the president just said we may very likely go into a recession, it would be pretty normal to be aware or concerned. The question is, what do you do with that information? Do you start creating a plan? Do you start really looking at what you can cut out of your spending and really focus in on saving? Or do you go into this tailspin of, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And then instead of doing what you need to do, save money and spend less, you start overspending and you go and you try to just drown it out, or you go and have a drink, or you go and eat something you shouldn't. We all handle those things differently. And the key is to just identify them, not beat yourself up, just be aware of it. Now, one of the things that's really critical once you identify it is to, I say, turn it off and just sit in it and say, what about hearing the president say that there's potentially a recession has really sent me into a trigger? You say, what if we don't have enough money saved? What if I lose my job? What if, and you just sit in it. And what I want you to do is I want you to sit in it. I want you to notice how you're feeling. So if you start feeling like a little sweaty, a little anxious, one thing that can help is to act like a third eye. You're over here and you're watching yourself and you're like, that's so interesting. That triggers you. And just sit in it. Or you can also do it where you're like describing it to someone. If you were describing it to, let's say, a Martian or somebody who had never experienced anxiety, what would you say? I heard that there might be a recession, and I felt a little bit sweaty under my armpits. My palms got a little bit clammy. My heart was beating a little higher. And the Martian would probably say, but you're really okay. It really wasn't that big of a deal. See, we make things so much bigger sometimes than they are. But see, the bigger problem I have with this, or the bigger concern I have with this, is the fact that you are not doing what you need to do. So what ends up happening is you're in such a state of, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I could lose my job. We're not going to have enough money for retirement. Whatever goes on your mind, maybe you're already retired and you're saying, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Inflation's going to increase. We're not going to be able to afford groceries. And you go into that tailspin. What I want you doing is doing something that can alleviate the issue. Maybe you're going to get a part-time job. Maybe you're going to downsize. Maybe you're going to look at ways you can cut back on where you're spending. The point being is you're a lot better off if you're focusing in on an action that's going to help you, regardless of what happens, as compared to staying in that state of inertia where you're just fearful and you just don't even know what to do. A common money block is to limit your information of what you want to be true. This is probably the biggest thing I see that's a problem. And I talked a little bit about it a minute ago, but if you're watching news that tells you everything is either great or everything is a problem, you're guilty of this. Because what ends up happening is you end up making financial decisions with about 50% of the information, maybe in some cases 25%. It would be normal to worry about money and much more likely, I would say. When we only listen to information that supports our beliefs at a core level, there is often a lot of fear of getting additional information. It's almost like people don't want information they don't want. The problem for me is that I have to make decisions with all the facts. I have to make decisions based on not this side or that side, but what is reality and what a person needs to do so they're going to be okay financially. But regardless of how you feel, you've got to get enough factual information to make an informed decision. Making an emotional decision on how you feel without all the facts is rarely the best option, especially when it comes to financial decisions that are going to impact your life now as well as in retirement. Another key issue that's going to help you in this area is to make your health a priority by getting adequate sleep, eating a healthy diet, and exercise. This goes a long way in helping you make the best choices for securing your financial future. All right, number 2, creating a comprehensive plan. For those who find themselves overly preoccupied with money, the key is to develop a detailed and actionable plan. And a comprehensive financial plan should do that. So the first thing you got to do is have clear objectives and an assessment. This is the understanding of where you currently stand. You want to look at your goals and aspirations and define where you want to go. This includes both your bucket list of dreams as well as your essential needs. The next portion is your spending plan and your budget. And you've got to distinguish between necessities and wants, what you absolutely must have versus what you would like to have. If you're a worrier, you likely do not have this dialed in. When you do, you're going to feel much more confident in your plan. And as a result, you're going to experience more peace of mind. So spend time on this. Because as I share, I save all the money I make. It's so nice because if you have enough residual income coming in, you don't need money. Now I'm expanding. I'm actually going all in because I was worried. What I was worried about is I'm very concerned about the impact a lot of these changes are going to have on Social Security and Medicare. And I know a lot of people don't want to go down that path. They don't want to talk about it. I just got back from a conference where I spoke with several people. They said, absolutely, they're going to have to reduce it. And so what I figured is I can sit at home worrying about other people and what are they doing? How are they going to be okay? Or I can be out helping people. And so I'm just doubling down. And so I feel like people are like, what are you going to do in retirement? I'm doing that right now. I'm not retired, but I feel empowered. I'm worrying less. I'm much more empowered because I know I'm doing everything I can to help you, my listener, as well as my client. And that makes me feel better. I have more peace of mind. I'm less worried. With economic uncertainties and spending cuts affecting so many people, it's so critical to focus on what is essential and what you need. Risk management through insurance. You've got to make sure you look at all your different coverages, property and casualty. This includes your liability, homeowners, and auto insurance, medical, making sure you have adequate levels and the right deductible based on your situation, an umbrella policy to protect your net worth against claims that exceed your basic coverage, disability if you or your partner can't work, life insurance to protect you against a premature death, and then long-term care coverage if you can't take care of yourself. Now, there's other insurances that likely may impact you depending on your situation, but those are a great place to start. The purpose in your risk plan is to ensure that unforeseen events don't lead to a financial disaster. Now, sometimes you can do a policy, like I like hybrid policies where you have a combination of life insurance, long-term care, and an annuity. So if you don't need it for life insurance or long-term care, you can use it for your retirement income. So it gives you the flexibility. Now, those typically aren't going to be as good of coverage for long-term care as a pure policy, but they give you more flexibility. You've got to work with an advisor and determine what works best for you. If you have questions on that, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/SR. Insurance is critical to warriors because it represents risks that can destroy or wreak havoc on your finances, and it provides you peace of mind. So make sure you have the right coverage. All right, you want to have an integrated retirement and tax plan. You know, there should be a dual focus on both. You've got to analyze your retirement strategy along with your tax situation. You want to optimize it. This integration prevents gaps in your retirement savings It maximizes your income, and it's going to cause you to have more money in retirement. What ends up happening with a lot of people is they end up having less money in retirement because they're not optimizing their taxes or they're not optimizing their fees. So when you start looking at where they're invested, they've got super high fees from trading costs, and they don't even see those because those don't have to be reported. So what you always want to look at is what is the turnover in this particular fund. That is absolutely critical, and most people don't. And what ends up happening then is you have less money now and you have less money in retirement. In addition, you want to analyze your current tax plan as well as the projected one in retirement. That's something I see missing a lot. All right, number 4, income and investment planning. Your investment plan should include liquid cash, fixed income, growth assets, which may include stocks and real estate, as well as alternatives if it's appropriate for your situation. While this is imperative for most people, it is critical for worriers. In my 35 years, one thing that I've seen proven over and over again is that clients who have consistent guaranteed income worry less and have more peace of mind because they've got guaranteed income. As I shared the story at the beginning, one of my clients, she literally lived 32 years longer than she was on her life expectancy. And I guarantee it was because she had guaranteed income. She did not worry at all. Even though she was a spender, every month she knew she was getting money. It was just amazing to watch. And it really got me thinking differently about my own retirement. Because a lot of people tell you if you have money, you don't really need to have guaranteed income. And my husband was a big voice in this. We don't need it. We've got plenty of money. And I'm like, we may not need it, but it makes me feel more comfortable. And because of that, it shifted everything. He literally this is so awesome. Now, we've got enough guaranteed income right now, pretty much, to pay all of our expenses. But we're going to get a major raise at the point where I retire. And so what's nice about it is we're going to have more money than we need. And it's just nice to know that. And I think this is especially true for women. Even though my husband has come full circle around, he was not bought into it initially. This is dumb. We can make more money than this. I'm like, I don't care how much money we can make. We'll still make money on a lot of the things we have invested in real estate and stocks. But having guaranteed income gives you peace of mind. So if you're like me and you don't want to worry, you want to know you have enough money, it's great option. So let's talk about examples of guaranteed income because a lot of people ask that. Social Security, that's a huge one. Now the outlook is looking less optimistic, and depending how old you are, it's becoming more and more problematic. And with a lot of cuts they're going to have to make, if they truly are going to cut spending, is going to clearly have to come from Social Security, from Medicare, and obviously Medicaid. Now let's talk for 1 minute because people say they've said they wouldn't touch Social Security. What politician would ever get reelected if they were talking about cutting Social Security? My friends, no one is ever going to tell you they're going to cut Social Security and get elected. But this is a situation that I'm more concerned about than them cutting it, is that they're not going to be funding it. And anyone that, is paying attention, one of the things they're talking about doing is not taxing overtime, not taxing tips, not taxing Social Security. So if you're wealthy and you get Social Security and you're making a lot of money, they tax you. Those 3 things fund Social Security. Another one is immigration, and it's on 2 fronts. One of the issues is the fact of a lot of these undocumented workers, they have to have a Social Security card. So they have a Social Security card that's not theirs, that they are paying taxes in, that they'll never get back. And that ranges anywhere from, depending on what report you look at, between 25 and 95 billion. They don't know. We're going to find out pretty quickly because there's a lot of people that are working and having to pay taxes into the system are removed from the country. We're going to find that out. And then the other thing, which just recently came up, which I was really interested in, I just heard it yesterday, is that a lot of immigrants that are still here that are not documented are no longer paying taxes because there's some issue with now that DOG and some of the powers that be are getting into the Treasury, which they're not supposed to be, but they are. And they're using it basically to find people that are legal and illegal. They're saying, oh, people are not paying taxes. So all those things are going to impact all the programs, but The ones I'm mostly concerned about is Social Security and Medicare. I'm also concerned about Medicaid because I think that the people that are truly poor and don't have any money, that is our responsibility to help them. I think a lot of us would agree that the people that can't do anything that really need it are one group, but then there's probably a group between there and the ones that really can work. And so somebody's got to figure that out. The other issue I'm concerned about when it comes to Medicaid is that I have had a lot of clients who have been impacted by it, not because they need it, but because a relative does, a child does, a parent does. And what ends up happening is if you run out of assets right now, they can basically get their home care paid for. So they can go live in a facility. They have to give their assets to the state, but then the state pays for them. If there's not money, that's not going to happen. And I just had this conversation with one of my clients who, between her and her husband, have a lot of money, but her siblings don't. And it's basically about $2,500 a month. I said, who's going to pay that $7,500? She said, yeah, this is a problem. So you got to be aware of that. So Social Security is one. Pensions through a company has been very common in the past. However, the burden now is on the employee via 401k. A lot of people don't realize that companies basically went from funding your retirement basically at a level higher than many people were earning to now only matching 3 to 6% of what you contribute. It is fascinating. And people are like, oh, I love my 401k. I get 6%. Like, it's good you love it because what you would have really loved what you would have gotten before. But the reality of it is they've pushed the burden of retirement planning onto the employees. And then the third option is something like a guaranteed annuity. This option is a guaranteed income contract between you and an insurance company. You give them X amount and they guarantee you a lifetime income. Tips to make sure before you even consider annuity is making sure you're using a fiduciary. This is somebody that is required to offer you the best option versus the one that they make the most money in. That's absolutely critical. Always use a reputable advisor who's going to analyze the fees, the ratings, and other factors that are going to impact your finances. And if you need help with these decisions, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/SR for support-request. Private school or college funding. So for families, if you have children or grandchildren, you want to plan ahead for educational expenses. Looks like a lot of the grants and even, I don't know about loans, but a lot of the money is going to be impacted as far as the education moving forward. So you got to be prepared for that. Estate planning. You want to look at your asset distribution and you want to make sure those assets are being distributed according to your wish. I want to really emphasize, it is, in my opinion, imperative that you do a financial plan before you do an estate plan. Because what I find happens when you just start with an estate plan versus a financial plan is you end up having to amend it. Because what ends up happening is you've missed out on what are you going to do for income for your beneficiaries? Who's going to be named in the document? And you want to make sure it's for trustee, the trust protector, the advisor, all of those things. What are you going to do in the event that the trustee is not adhering to what you say they need to do? Or they're not giving the beneficiary money. There are so many issues that come up there. And a lot of times, if you don't have a financial plan, you haven't identified those things, you have to go back to the table and it ends up costing you more money. All right, key documents. You want to include trusts, power of attorneys, medical directives, and even burial plans. Some states have different documents, and a qualified attorney and financial advisor will make sure these documents are done. And then you want to have advanced considerations. Depending on your situation, you may need advanced strategies like an irrevocable trust, partnership, something along those lines to manage your specific situation. All right, number 3, and possibly the most important, is execution. That's the final piece. Even with right mindset and the best plan, the secret formula to worry less is you've got to execute, and you've got to have consistent execution. You've got to have discipline. Discipline is the key. You've got to consistently execute whether you feel like it or not. And then you've got to follow through. Having a solid plan isn't enough. The real difference lies in the consistent execution. And I have seen it over and over again. People will do this great plan and then they're not executing, or they don't even know how to execute. That's the key of having a good advisor, is that they tell you the next step And a good one, in my opinion, gives you options. Option A, option B, option C. 2 to 3 options, so you can decide. But see, the problem is if you don't have an advisor and you're not as up to speed as an advisor, which you typically wouldn't be because most of us are spending 50 to 60 hours a week in the trenches making sure we are, knowing what is the next best step or knowing what is the next best option. And that's the key. By creating a healthy money mindset, developing a comprehensive plan that covers your objectives, risk management, retirement, tax planning, income, education, and estate planning, and then executing that plan consistently, you can transform your financial anxiety into a pathway towards stability and peace of mind. My friends, you can do this. You just got to do it. So just start. Go back, identify blocks, triggers, start working on your comprehensive plan, and then execute. And if you need help, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/SR. I'm Annette Ba'u. All international copyrights are reserved. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.
If you love the content of this podcast, please follow and subscribe to our channel so you get notified of episodes, and also give us a 5-star review and share a comment. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on taking another step to create a financially free life you love. If you're not sure about your financial future or that it's in order, or you are ready to stop worrying about money, or possibly the fear of becoming a bag lady, ending up broke in retirement, or you simply are ready to know your financial house is in order so you can have a bright financial future, please go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. And that doesn't stand for non-sufficient funds. It stands for Next Step Finance. It's the next best step of what you need to do so you can avoid an NSF notice in your future. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. The number of women who were not broke or poor while working or married is staggering. The entire mission of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast is to ensure you have the information for you, your family, your friends, anyone who's willing to listen to it and apply it so that you can create a financially free life you love. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. Until our next episode, take one action that will help you create a financially free life you love. I'm Annette Ba'u, your host. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.